The rain hammered against the metal dumpster with a relentless rhythm that matched Maya Chen's chattering teeth. She pressed herself deeper into the narrow alley between two towering apartment buildings, her threadbare jacket doing little to keep out the October chill that had settled over downtown Seattle like a cruel promise of the winter to come. At 17, Maya had learned that survival meant being invisible, but tonight invisibility felt more like slowly disappearing altogether. The cardboard beneath her had turned to mush hours ago, and her stomach cramped with a hunger so familiar it had become her constant companion. She'd been living on the streets for 3 years now, ever since aging out of her last foster home. At 14, a birthday present she'd never asked for. Thunder cracked overhead, and Maya flinched, instinctively reaching for the small backpack that held everything she owned. 2 changes of clothes, a water bottle with a crack that leaked just enough to be annoying, and a worn photograph of a woman with kind eyes and Maya's same stubborn chin. The only clue to a past she couldn't remember, and a mother who had simply vanished when Maya was 4 years old. Lightning illuminated the alley in stark white, and something caught her eye, a metallic glint from inside the overflowing dumpster. Across from her makeshift shelter, Maya hesitated. Dumpster diving was a dangerous business in this part of town. Too many needles, too many broken bottles, too many things that could cut or poison or worse. But something about that glint called to her, persistent as a heartbeat. The rain intensified, driving her to make a choice. Maya pulled her hood up and darted across the narrow alley, her worn sneakers splashing through puddles that reflected the neon signs from the street beyond. The dumpster reeked of rotting food and something chemical that made her eyes water. But she'd smelled worse. She'd lived worse. Standing on her tiptoes, Maya peered over the edge. Garbage bags split open like wounded animals, spilling their contents in a chaos of refuse. But they're nestled between a soggy pizza box and what looked like old legal documents. Something glittered. Not the false shine of broken glass or aluminum foil, but something deeper. Something real. Maya's heart hammered as she reached inside, her fingers closing around cold metal. She pulled her hand back, and her breath caught in her throat. It was a ring, not just any ring, but a diamond solitaire that caught what little light filtered into the alley and threw it back in brilliant sparks. The setting was platinum, elegant but understated, and even through the grime of the dumpster, Maya could see that this was the real deal. This was someone's treasure, someone's promise, someone's forever, and someone had thrown it away. Maya's hands shook as she held the ring up to the light. The diamond was at least 2 carats, maybe more. She'd learned about jewelry from Mrs. Patterson, one of her more tolerable foster mothers who'd worked part-time at a pawn shop. This ring was worth more money than Maya had ever seen in her life. More money than she could imagine. It could mean food. Real food, not the scraps she found or the day-old bread the shelter sometimes had left over. It could mean a warm place to sleep, maybe even a cheap motel room for a few nights. It could mean survival, but as Maya turned the ring in her fingers, she noticed something that made her stomach drop. Engraved on the inside of the band, in elegant script, were 2 names, Elena and David. Forever. Someone had loved this ring enough to have it engraved. Someone had made promises with it, maybe said yes to a lifetime of tomorrows. And now it was in a dumpster, discarded like trash. Maya closed her fist around the ring and looked up at the building towering above her. Through the lit windows, she could see glimpses of other lives. A woman washing dishes, a man watching television, children's silhouettes dancing across walls painted with warmth and security. Normal lives. Lives that included things like engagement rings and promises of forever. The rain was letting up, but Maya barely noticed. Her mind raced with possibilities, each one more desperate than the last. She could pawn the ring, no questions asked. Street kids learned quickly which shops didn't care about provenance. She could eat for weeks, maybe find a more permanent shelter, maybe even save enough to get back on her feet. But she could also try to find Elena. The thought came unbidden, foolish and impractical. Maya had learned the hard way that heroes existed only in stories, that doing the right thing was a luxury she couldn't afford. The streets had taught her that survival meant looking out for number one. That trust was a weakness that could get you killed. Yet something about the ring's weight in her palm felt like more than precious metal and stone. It felt like someone's broken dreams, like a story that deserved an ending better than a dumpster in a forgotten alley. Maya slipped the ring into her jacket pocket and looked around the alley one more time. The rain had stopped, leaving the pavement slick and reflecting the distant streetlights like scattered stars. In a few hours, the sun would rise, and the city would wake up to another day of people rushing past her as if she didn't exist. But tonight, she held someone's forever in her pocket. And for the first time in years, Maya Chen felt like maybe she could be more than invisible. Maya spent the rest of the night huddled in the doorway of a closed laundromat, the ring burning like a secret in her pocket. Every few minutes, she'd slip her hand inside her jacket to make sure it was still there, her fingers tracing the smooth platinum band and the sharp edges of the diamond that seemed to pulse with possibility. As dawn painted the Seattle skyline in shades of gray and gold, Maya made her way to her usual morning spot outside Pike Place Market. The early commuters were already streaming past, clutching their coffee cups like lifelines, their eyes carefully avoiding hers. She'd perfected the art of being simultaneously visible enough to receive the occasional dollar bill and invisible enough to avoid the cops who regularly swept the area clean of undesirables. But today felt different. Today, Maya found herself studying the faces of passing women, wondering if any of them could be Elena. Was she young or old? Did she have children? Had she thrown the ring away in anger, or had someone else made that choice for her? You look like you got hit by a truck, kid. Maya looked up to see Danny approaching with his characteristic shuffle. At 63, Danny was an old-timer on the streets, a former construction worker whose back had given out and whose luck had run out with it. He'd taken Maya under his wing during her first terrifying weeks on her own, teaching her which shelters were safe, which alleys to avoid, and which dumpsters had the best food. "Rough night," Maya said, scooting over to make room for him on the concrete steps. Danny lowered himself down with a grunt, his joints protesting the movement. "The storm kept everybody up, but you got that look about you today. Something's different." Maya's hand moved instinctively to her pocket. Danny was observant. It's how he'd survived so long, but she wasn't ready to share her secret. "Not yet. Just thinking," she said. "Dangerous habit," Danny replied with a grin that revealed several missing teeth. "Gets you in trouble every time." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city wake up around them. A businessman dropped a $5 bill into Maya's cup without making eye contact. A mother hurried past with two young children, instructing them not to stare. A police officer approached, and both Maya and Danny tensed, but he merely nodded and continued his patrol. "Danny," Maya said eventually, "what would you do if you found something valuable? Something that didn't belong to you?" Danny's weathered face creased into a thoughtful expression. "Depends on how valuable and how hungry I was. Really valuable. Like change your life is valuable. Ah." Danny studied her face with eyes that had seen too much. "And it belongs to someone else?" Maya nodded. "Well, kid, that's the kind of question that separates who you are from who you want to be." Danny pulled out a cigarette stub and lit it with practiced efficiency. "Been on these streets long enough to know there's two kinds of people, those who take what they need to survive, and those who try to do right even when it costs them. Which kind are you?" Danny took a long drag and exhaled slowly. "I've been both, depending on the day. But I'll tell you this, the nights I sleep best are the ones when I chose to be the second kind." Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed. She'd managed to hold onto an old smartphone. keeping it charged at the library and using free Wi-Fi to stay connected to the world that had largely forgotten her. The notification was from a local news app, something she'd started, following to stay informed about weather and city policies that might affect her daily survival. But today's headline made her heart stop. Missing woman feared dead after apartment fire. Maya's hands trembled as she opened the article. A photograph of a woman with kind eyes and dark hair filled the screen, a woman who looked hauntingly familiar. The caption read, "Elena Rodriguez, 34, has been missing since Tuesday night's apartment fire on Capitol Hill. Authorities found no remains in the building, but neighbors report they haven't seen her since before the blaze." Maya's breath caught in her throat. Elena, the name from The Ring. She scrolled frantically through the article, absorbing details that felt like puzzle pieces clicking into place. Elena Rodriguez worked as a nurse at Harborview Medical Center. She lived alone in a studio apartment that had been completely destroyed in an electrical fire 3 days ago. Her car was found abandoned 6 blocks from the building. The police were treating her disappearance as suspicious. The article included a quote from Elena's supervisor. She was supposed to work a double shift that night, but she called in sick at the last minute. That wasn't like Elena at all. She was one of our most reliable nurses. And at the bottom of the article, a detail that made Maya's blood run cold. Rodriguez was recently engaged to David Park, a software engineer, though family members report the couple had been experiencing relationship difficulties. Maya's mind raced. The ring had been engraved with Elena and David forever. If Elena was missing, how had her engagement ring ended up in a dumpster? Had she thrown it away before disappearing? Has someone else disposed of it? Or was Elena's disappearance connected to something darker? "Maya?" Danny's voice seemed to come from far away. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Maya looked up from her phone, her face pale. "Danny, I think I need to find someone." The Seattle Public Library had become Maya's sanctuary over the years, one of the few places where she could exist without judgment, where her appearance didn't immediately mark her as unwelcome. The librarians had long since stopped questioning her presence, and she'd learned to navigate the building's resources like a master detective. Now, seated at a computer terminal in the corner of the reference section, Maya dove deep into her research about Elena Rodriguez. The ring felt heavy in her pocket, its weight seeming to increase with every article she read. Elena's social media profiles painted a picture of a vibrant woman devoted to her work and her patients. Her Facebook page was filled with photos from the hospital's pediatric ward, where she volunteered her free time reading to sick children. Her Instagram showed a love for hiking, cooking, and her small garden on the fire escape of her now destroyed apartment. But as Maya scrolled through the posts from the past few months, she began to notice troubling patterns. The photos with David had stopped appearing around 3 months ago. Elena's posts had become less frequent, more subdued. And in the final weeks before her disappearance, her messages had taken on an almost desperate quality. One post from 2 weeks ago made Maya's stomach clench. Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us deepest. Learning to recognize the signs. #survivor #strength #finding my voice. Maya screenshotted the post and continued digging. She found David Park's LinkedIn profile: successful software engineer at a major tech company, graduated from University of Washington, originally from California. His social media presence was minimal, professional, revealing little about his personal life, but a deeper search revealed more troubling information. Maya found a public record search that showed David had been arrested twice in the past 5 years, once for disorderly conduct and once for domestic violence, though the charges had been dropped both times. Research project? Maya jumped quickly, minimizing her browser window. A young librarian named Jessica stood behind her, smiling warmly. Jessica had always been kind to Maya, often pretending not to notice when she dozed off in the reading chairs or used the bathroom to wash up. Something like that, Maya said carefully. If you need access to any databases or archived newspapers, just let me know. We have resources that aren't available through regular web searches. Maya hesitated, then made a decision. Actually, could you help me find news coverage about a specific fire? It happened on Capitol Hill 3 days ago. Jessica's expression grew serious. The apartment fire on Pine Street? That was terrible. One woman is still missing. Elena Rodriguez, Maya said quietly. You knew her? Jessica's voice was gentle. Maya touched the ring through her jacket. I'm trying to help find her. Jessica studied Maya's face, and whatever she saw there seemed to convince her. Let me see what I can pull up. The Seattle Times and local TV stations would have covered it. For the next hour, Jessica helped Maya access archived news footage and newspaper articles that hadn't appeared in her basic web searches. The picture that emerged was increasingly disturbing. The fire department's preliminary report suggested the blaze had started in Elena's apartment, but the cause remained under investigation. Several witnesses reported hearing shouting from Elena's unit in the hours before the fire was discovered. A neighbor had called in a domestic disturbance complaint around 9 p.m., but police arrived to find the apartment empty and no signs of Elena or David. The fire had started sometime after midnight. Maya's hands clenched as she read a witness statement from Elena's upstairs neighbor. I heard them fighting earlier that evening. She was telling him to leave, that it was over. He was yelling back, saying she belonged to him. Then it got quiet, and I thought they'd worked it out. I never imagined. Maya? Jessica's voice was concerned. Are you okay? You look upset. Maya realized she'd been holding her breath. The police, she said urgently. Do they consider David a suspect? Jessica pulled up the most recent article. According to this, he has an alibi. He was at work late that night. His company's security system shows him badging in and out. Plus, there are traffic cameras that show his car never left the downtown area. But Maya was already thinking ahead, her mind working through possibilities that made her stomach turn. If David had an alibi, but the ring had been thrown away, what did that mean? Had Elena herself discarded it before disappearing? Or was someone else involved? Jessica, Maya said slowly, is there a way to find out exactly where that dumpster's contents came from? Like, which buildings or businesses empty their trash there? Jessica looked puzzled but intrigued. That's very specific. Why? Maya's hand moved to her pocket again. The weight of the ring felt like the weight of responsibility, of a choice that could change everything, not just for her, but potentially for Elena, wherever she was. I think I found something that might help find her, Maya said quietly. But I need to be sure I understand what it means first. What do you think will happen next? Share your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories. Maya left the library with her head spinning and a piece of paper clutched in her hand. Jessica had managed to get her the contact information for the city's waste management department. It wasn't much, but it was a starting point. The afternoon sun had broken through Seattle's perpetual cloud cover, casting long shadows across the city streets. Maya walked with purpose now, her usual careful invisibility replaced by determination that made her feel both powerful and terrifyingly exposed. The waste management office was located in an industrial area south of downtown, a maze of warehouses and loading docks that smelled of diesel fuel and urban decay. Maya had to take 2 buses to get there, spending precious money from her daily earnings. But something told her this investment might pay off in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Receptionist at the waste management office was a tired-looking woman in her 50s, who barely glanced up when Maya approached. I need information about trash pickup routes, Maya said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. You'll need to file a formal request. the woman replied without looking up from her computer. It takes 3 to 5 business days. It's about the missing woman, Maya said quietly. Elena Rodriguez. From the fire. That got the woman's attention. She looked up, taking in Maya's appearance with undisguised skepticism. Are you with the police? I'm trying to help find her, Maya said, which was technically true. The woman studied her for a long moment, then seemed to come to some internal decision. What do you need to know? There's a dumpster in the alley between the Meridian Apartments and the old brick building on 3rd Avenue. I need to know which businesses or residences use that pickup point. The woman turned to her computer and typed rapidly. That's right, 47B. Services 8 businesses and 2 residential buildings in that block. She printed out a sheet of paper and handed it to Maya. But honey, if you're really trying to help that missing woman, you should be talking to the police, not the garbage department. Maya folded the paper carefully. Sometimes people don't listen to girls like me. Something in Maya's voice must have resonated, because the woman's expression softened slightly. You should be careful out there. This city's not safe for young women on their own. Maya nodded and headed back into the afternoon light, studying the list as she walked. Most of the businesses were typical downtown establishments: a dry cleaner, a small restaurant, a law office, an accounting firm. But one address made her heart race: an apartment building at 1247 3rd Avenue. According to her research, David Park lived at 1251 3rd Avenue. The buildings were practically next door to each other. Maya's mind churned as she walked back toward the bus stop. If David lived that close to the dumpster where she'd found the ring, it created possibilities that made her both excited and terrified. Maybe David had disposed of the ring himself. Maybe Elena had thrown it away during their final fight. Or maybe something much worse had happened. The bus ride back downtown felt endless. Maya stared out the window at the passing city, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. She looked younger than her 17 years, fragile and insubstantial. But she'd survived 3 years on the streets. By being tougher than she looked, smarter than people expected, and more determined than anyone gave her credit for. By the time Maya reached her familiar downtown territory, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that reminded her of the few good memories from her childhood sitting on a fire escape somewhere, watching the sunset with a woman whose face she couldn't quite recall but whose voice had been soft and safe. Danny was waiting for her at their usual evening spot, a loading dock behind a closed furniture store where they could set up their cardboard and sleeping bags without being hassled. You missed dinner at the shelter, he said without preamble. Sally was asking about you. Maya felt a stab of guilt. Sally ran one of the few shelters that didn't ask too many questions or make demands that teenagers couldn't meet. Missing a meal there was like throwing away money. I was researching, Maya said, settling down beside Danny. That missing woman? Maya nodded, surprised by how easily Danny had connected the dots. You found something, didn't you? Danny's weathered face was serious in the gathering dusk. Something that's got you spooked. Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out the ring. In the fading light, the diamond caught the glow from a nearby street lamp and threw it back in tiny rainbows. Danny whistled low. Holy hell, kid. Where did you find that? The dumpster behind Meridian Apartments. 3 nights ago, right after the rainstorm. Danny took the ring, turning it over in his calloused hands. This is the real deal. Worth more than you and I have ever seen. He looked up at Maya sharply. But it's not yours. It belongs to Elena Rodriguez, the missing woman. The one from the fire? Danny's expression grew troubled. Maya, if this woman is missing and her ring is showing up in dumpsters, that suggests— I know what it suggests, Maya interrupted. That's why I can't just pawn it and walk away. Danny was quiet for a long moment, studying the ring, and then, Maya's face. What do you plan to do? I think I need to talk to David Park. The fiancé? Danny's voice sharpened. Kid, that's dangerous thinking. If he's involved in her disappearance, confronting him directly could what? Get me killed? Maya's laugh was bitter. Danny, I live on the streets. Every day could get me killed. At least this way, maybe I can do something that matters. Danny handed the ring back to her. And if you're wrong? If he's innocent and you're just a homeless girl accusing him of God knows what? Maya closed her fingers around the ring. Then I'll figure out what really happened to Elena. Either way, I can't pretend I never found this. Danny sighed deeply. The sound of a man who'd seen too much of life's cruelty to be surprised by anything, but who hadn't yet lost the ability to care. If you're determined to do this foolish thing, he said finally, at least be smart about it. Don't go alone. Don't go unprepared. And for God's sake, don't trust anybody until you know what you're dealing with. Maya nodded, but her mind was already racing ahead to tomorrow, to David Park, and to the questions that might finally lead her to Elena Rodriguez, dead or alive. Maya spent most of the night planning her approach to David Park. She couldn't simply knock on his door and accuse him of disposing of his missing fiancé's ring. That would be dangerous and probably useless. She needed to be smarter, more subtle. As dawn broke over the city, Maya made her way to David's apartment building. The structure was modern and expensive looking, with a doorman and security cameras that made her acutely aware of her shabby appearance. She positioned herself across the street at a bus stop, where she could observe the building's entrance without attracting attention. Her patience was rewarded. Around 8:30 a.m., when a man matching David's photograph emerged from the building. He was tall and lean, dressed in the standard uniform of Seattle tech workers, dark jeans, button-down shirt, messenger bag slung over his shoulder. But there was something in his posture, a tension in his shoulders, and the way his eyes constantly scanned the street, that set Maya's nerves on edge. David walked quickly toward the downtown core, and Maya followed at a distance, using skills she'd learned from observing how other street kids tailed potential marks. Stay far enough back to avoid notice, but close enough to keep your target in sight. Use crowds for cover. Never follow in a straight line. David entered a gleaming office tower in the heart of the business district. Maya waited outside for nearly an hour, watching the endless stream of workers entering and leaving the building. Before a plan began to form in her mind, she approached the building's security desk with confidence she didn't feel. "Excuse me," she said to the guard, a middle-aged man who looked bored out of his mind. "I'm supposed to deliver something to David Park, but I don't have his floor number." The guard barely looked up. "Name?" Maya Chen. I'm from his apartment building's management company." The guard consulted his computer. 17th floor. Take the elevator bank on the right. Maya's heart hammered as she rode the elevator up, still hardly believing her bluff had worked. The 17th floor housed the offices of Cascade Digital Solutions, according to the tasteful signage. Through glass walls, Maya could see rows of programmers hunched over multiple monitors, lost in their digital worlds. "Can I help you?" A receptionist looked up as Maya approached the front desk. "I need to speak with David Park. It's about Elena Rodriguez." The receptionist's expression immediately grew concerned. "Are you with the police?" "We've already spoken to detectives about David's whereabouts that night." "I'm not with the police," Maya said carefully. "But I have information about Elena that David needs to hear." The receptionist hesitated, then picked up her phone. "David, there's someone here to see you about Elena. She says she has information." "Okay, I'll send her back." Maya was directed down a hallway lined with conference rooms and offices. David's workspace was in an open area near the back, his desk cluttered with multiple monitors and the detritus of a programmer's life empty. Coffee cups, energy drink cans, and sticky notes covered in indecipherable code. David looked up as Maya approached, and she saw immediately that he looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, his normally neat hair disheveled, and his hands shook slightly as he minimized whatever he'd been working on. "You said you have information about Elena?" His voice was hoarse, desperate. Maya pulled a chair up to his desk, acutely aware of the curious glances from his co-workers. "My name is Maya Chen. I found something that belongs to Elena." David's face went pale. "What do you mean you found something?" Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out the ring, placing it carefully on David's desk. The diamond caught the fluorescent office lighting and scattered it in brilliant points of light. David's reaction was immediate and devastating. He reached for the ring with trembling hands, his breath coming in short gasps. "Where did you find this?" he whispered. "In a dumpster near your apartment building," Maya said, watching his face carefully. 3 days ago. The night after Elena disappeared." David looked up at her with eyes that were either filled with genuine anguish or were the product of excellent acting. "She threw it at me," he said quietly. "During our last fight. She said she never wanted to see me again, that she'd rather die than marry me." "What were you fighting about?" David's hands clenched into fists. "She thought I was controlling. She said I was suffocating her, that she couldn't breathe around me anymore." His voice broke. "I loved her so much, maybe too much. I couldn't understand why that was wrong." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "Did you follow her when she left?" "She didn't leave," David said, his voice taking on a strange, distant quality. "She locked herself in the bathroom and wouldn't come out. I waited outside for hours, begging her to talk to me. When she finally opened the door, she just looked at me with these eyes, like she was afraid of me. And then what happened?" David's gaze fixed on the ring, and Maya saw something shift in his expression, a hardening, a withdrawal. "I left. I came here to work, to think. When I went back the next morning, the building was surrounded by fire trucks." Maya studied his face, looking for signs of deception. But David seemed genuinely distraught, genuinely confused by Elena's disappearance. "David," she said softly, "if Elena threw the ring at you during your fight, how did it end up in a dumpster?" David looked up at her with an expression that was part confusion, part dawning horror. I don't know. I left it on her kitchen counter when I went to work. I thought maybe if she saw it there, she'd remember what we meant to each other." Maya's mind raced through the implications. If David was telling the truth, then someone else had disposed of the ring. Someone who had been in Elena's apartment after David left, but before the fire started. "David," Maya said urgently, "did Elena have any enemies? Anyone who might want to hurt her?" David shook his head slowly, then stopped. "Wait, there was. She'd been getting strange messages. Phone calls where nobody would speak. She thought it might be one of her patients' family members. Sometimes people blame the nurses when loved ones don't recover. Did she report it to the police?" "She tried, but they said unless there were actual threats, there wasn't much they could do." David's voice grew stronger, more focused. "Who are you? Why are you asking these questions? Are you working with the police?" Maya realized she'd pushed as far as she could without revealing too much about herself. "I'm someone who wants to find Elena," she said simply. "And I think she might still be alive." David's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" But Maya was already standing, sliding the ring back into her pocket. "I need to think about what you've told me. If you really want to help Elena, start making a list of everyone who might have had access to her apartment. Anyone she mentioned who made her uncomfortable. Anyone who might have a reason to want her gone." "Wait," David called as Maya headed for the elevators. "How do I contact you?" Maya paused at the elevator bank. "You don't. If I find something, I'll find you." As the elevator doors closed, Maya caught a glimpse of David staring after her with an expression of desperate hope mixed with something that might have been fear. Maya spent the rest of the morning in the library, her head spinning from her encounter with David. His reaction to seeing the ring had seemed genuine shock, pain, confusion. But Maya had learned not to trust first impressions. People were capable of deception that ran deeper than surface emotions. She pulled up Elena's social media profiles again, this time looking for patterns she might have missed. If Elena had been receiving threatening messages, there might be clues in her online presence. What Maya found made her blood run cold. Going back through Elena's Instagram posts from the past 6 months, Maya noticed that Elena had gradually stopped posting photos that showed her location. Her earlier posts had been filled with check-ins at restaurants, hiking trails, and the hospital where she worked. But starting about 4 months ago, the location tags had disappeared. More troubling were the comments. Maya scrolled through hundreds of responses to Elena's photos, most from friends and coworkers offering supportive messages. But mixed in were comments from an account called @watchful_guardian-, messages that seemed innocent on the surface but took on a sinister tone when read together. Looking beautiful as always, Elena. Hope you stay safe walking home alone at night. That apartment building doesn't look very secure. You deserve someone who truly appreciates you. Maya clicked on the @watchful_guardian profile, but it was private with no profile picture. The account had been created 8 months ago and followed only one person, Elena Rodriguez. Maya's hands trembled as she scrolled through Elena's Facebook messages, looking for similar patterns. She found them in the form of friend requests from fake accounts, profiles with generic names and stock photos that had tried to connect with Elena repeatedly over the past several months. This wasn't random harassment. This was systematic stalking. Maya printed out screenshots of the most concerning interactions and stuffed them into her backpack. She needed help, someone with more resources and authority than a homeless teenager possessed. But who would listen to her? The answer came to her as she remembered Jessica's kindness the day before. The librarian had resources Maya didn't, and more importantly, she was an adult who might be taken seriously by the authorities. Maya found Jessica reshelving books in the reference section. "I need your help," Maya said without preamble. Jessica looked up, immediately sensing Maya's urgency. "What's wrong?" "I think Elena Rodriguez was being stalked, and I think her stalker might have taken her." Jessica set down her armload of books. "Maya, what have you gotten yourself into?" Maya pulled out the screenshots and spread them across a nearby table. "Look at these comments, these friend requests. Someone was watching Elena, learning her patterns, making her feel unsafe." Jessica studied the printouts, her expression growing increasingly troubled. "This is ... This is really disturbing. Have you shown these to the police?" "They won't listen to me," Maya said. "I'm just a homeless kid, but they might listen to you." Jessica was quiet for a long moment, studying Maya's face. "There's something you're not telling me. How did you really get involved in this?" Maya's hand moved instinctively to her pocket, where the ring rested like a warm secret. She'd come this far by trusting her instincts, but every instinct she had told her that Jessica could be trusted. "I found something that belonged to Elena," Maya said quietly. "Something that proves she didn't just disappear." "What kind of something?" Maya looked around to make sure they weren't being overheard, then pulled out the ring. Jessica gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Maya," Jessica whispered, "where did you find that?" Maya told her everything: the dumpster, the research, her meeting with David, and her growing conviction that Elena had been the victim of a stalker who had escalated from harassment to something much worse. Jessica listened without interruption, her face growing more serious with each detail. When Maya finished, Jessica was quiet for a long time. "We need to go to the police," Jessica said finally. "This is evidence in a missing person case. But what if they don't believe us? What if they think I stole it? Then we make sure they listen," Jessica said firmly. I know a detective who specializes in cases involving violence against women. Should take this seriously." Maya felt a surge of hope mixed with terror. She'd been on her own for so long that the idea of trusting adults with authority felt like stepping off a cliff. But Elena was running out of time if she was even still alive. "There's something else," Maya said. "The stalker. I think I might know how to find him." Jessica raised an eyebrow. "How?" Maya pulled out her phone and showed Jessica the @watchful_guardian profile. "Social media accounts can be traced, right? IP addresses, device information, that kind of thing?" "By law enforcement, yes," Jessica said, studying the profile. "But Maya, there's something else we should consider. If this person was stalking Elena and she disappeared, we could be dealing with someone very dangerous." Maya nodded grimly. "I know, but Elena doesn't have time for us to be careful." Jessica made a decision. "I'm calling Detective Sarah Chun right now. She's with the Seattle PD's Special Victims Unit, and she won't dismiss this because of your age or situation." As Jessica pulled out her phone, Maya felt the weight of inevitability settling over her. Once they involved the police, everything would change. She would no longer be invisible, no longer be able to control how this investigation unfolded. But Elena's life might depend on taking that risk. "Detective Chun?" Jessica's voice was professional but urgent. "This is Jessica Martinez from the downtown library. I have information about the Elena Rodriguez missing person case." "Yes, I understand it's an active investigation. No, this can't wait." Maya listened as Jessica explained the situation in broad strokes, carefully not mentioning the ring until she could be sure they had the detective's attention. After several minutes of back and forth, Jessica hung up. "She'll meet us in 30 minutes, Jessica said. At the police station, Maya's stomach churned with anxiety. "What if this is a mistake?" "Maya," Jessica said gently. "What if it's not?" The Seattle Police Department's downtown precinct was exactly as intimidating as Maya had imagined, all fluorescent lights, institutional green walls, and the constant buzz of radio chatter. Maya stuck close to Jessica as they were led through a maze of desks and offices to a small conference room where Detective Sarah Chen was waiting. Detective Chen was younger than Maya had expected, probably in her early 30s, with sharp eyes and an air of competent authority that immediately put Maya on edge. She wore a simple black blazer and carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being taken seriously. "Jessica," the detective said warmly, shaking the librarian's hand. "Thanks for coming in." Her gaze shifted to Maya, and her expression became more guarded. "And you must be Maya." Maya nodded, suddenly very aware of her appearance, the worn clothes, the too thin frame, the way she probably looked like exactly what she was, a homeless teenager with a story that sounded too incredible to be true. "Please sit down," Detective Chen said, gesturing to chairs around a small table. "Jessica tells me you have information about Elena Rodriguez." Maya's hand moved to her pocket, fingers closing around the ring. This was the moment of truth, the point where she either became part of the solution or potentially part of the problem. "I found something that belongs to her," Maya said quietly. She placed the ring on the table between them. Detective Chun's reaction was immediate and professional. She leaned forward to study the ring without touching it, her expression shifting from polite interest to intense focus. "Where exactly did you find this?" the detective asked. Maya told her story again, from the rainstorm 3 nights ago to her encounter with David Park that morning. Detective Chen listened without interruption, occasionally making notes in a small notebook. "You said you spoke with David Park today?" the detective asked when Maya finished. "At his office. He told me about their final fight, how Elena threw the ring at him, and you believed him?" Maya hesitated. "I think he was telling the truth about the fight. But there's something else." She pulled out the screenshots of the social media harassment. Elena was being stalked. Detective Chen studied the printouts, her expression growing increasingly grim. "We're aware of some concerning online activity directed at Ms. Rodriguez," she said carefully. "But this is more extensive than what we'd previously identified." "You knew she was being stalked?" Maya asked. "Elena filed a report about 6 weeks ago. Unwanted phone calls, someone following her home from work. But the harassment seemed to stop, and we didn't have enough evidence to pursue it further." Jessica leaned forward. "But it didn't stop, did it? It just moved online." Detective Chen nodded slowly. "It appears that way." She looked directly at Maya. "What made you decide to investigate this yourself instead of simply turning in the ring?" Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Nobody listens to people like me. If I just walked into a police station with a story about finding a missing woman's ring in a dumpster, would you have believed me?" Detective Chen was quiet for a moment, then said, "You might be surprised, but I understand your concern." She paused, studying Maya's face. "Maya, I need to ask you some difficult questions. Is there any chance you were involved in Elena's disappearance? Any reason you might have access to her personal belongings?" Maya's heart hammered, but she met the detective's gaze steadily. "No, I never met Elena Rodriguez. I found the ring by accident, and I've been trying to figure out how to help her ever since." Detective Chen seemed to accept this. "The stalking evidence you've uncovered is valuable. We'll need to trace these accounts, analyze the communication patterns." She looked up at Maya. "But I need you to understand something. Investigating this case could put you in danger. If Elena's stalker is escalating to violence, becoming involved could make you a target." "I'm already a target every day," Maya said quietly. "At least this way, maybe I can help someone." Detective Chen studied her for a long moment, then seemed to come to a decision. "I want to show you something," she said, pulling out a file folder. "But first, I need your word that what you see in this room stays confidential. This is an active investigation." Maya nodded, her pulse quickening. Detective Chen opened the folder and pulled out several photographs. These were taken at Elena's apartment after the fire department cleared the scene. The photos showed the devastation Maya had expected: charred walls, collapsed ceiling, furniture reduced to twisted metal and ash. But Detective Chen pointed to one image that made Maya's blood run cold. "This was Elena's bedroom," the detective said. "Notice anything unusual?" Maya studied the photograph. Most of the room had been destroyed, but in one corner, relatively protected from the worst of the fire, was a small shrine-like arrangement. Photographs of Elena, some clearly taken without her knowledge from a distance, were arranged around. Candles and flowers. In the center was a handwritten note, partially burned but still legible. "Together forever, my darling Elena." "This wasn't here before the fire," Detective Chen said quietly. "Someone arranged this display, then set the fire to cover their tracks." Maya felt sick. "He took her, didn't he?" "The stalker. He took Elena before setting the fire." "That's our working theory," Detective Chen confirmed. "The question is whether she's still alive." Jessica reached over and squeezed Maya's hand. "What can we do to help?" Detective Chen looked at both of them seriously. "Maya, the information you've gathered has been invaluable. But from this point forward, this needs to be handled by law enforcement. I don't want you doing any more investigating on your own." Maya wanted to argue, but something in the detective's tone told her this wasn't negotiable. "However, Detective Chen continued, there is something you might be able to help us with. We've been trying to trace the online harassment, but we need someone who understands social media patterns, someone who might notice things we miss." She looked directly at Maya. "Would you be willing to work with our cybercrimes unit as a consultant?" Maya's eyes widened. "You want me to help officially?" "Unofficially," Detective Chen corrected. "But yes, You've already proven you have good instincts and an eye for detail. We could use that." For the first time in years, Maya felt like someone was offering her a chance to be more than invisible, more than just another casualty of a system that had failed her. She was being asked to help, to contribute something meaningful. "Yes," Maya said without hesitation. "I'll do whatever it takes to find Elena." The tension is building. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which character you're rooting for. Your support helps me create more incredible stories like this one. The Seattle Police Department's Cybercrimes Unit was located in the basement of the precinct, a maze of computer servers and workstations that hummed with constant electronic activity. Maya had never seen so much technology in one place: monitors displaying scrolling code, digital forensics equipment, and walls covered with flowcharts mapping online criminal networks. Detective Chen introduced Maya to Officer Marcus Rodriguez, a soft-spoken man in his late 20s who looked more like a college student than a police officer. His desk was cluttered with energy drink cans and action figures from various superhero movies. "Maya's the one who identified the stalking pattern," Detective Chen explained. "I thought she might be able to help us understand the behavioral aspects of the harassment." Marcus looked skeptical. "No offense, but digital forensics is pretty specialized work." "I'm not here to do your job," Maya said quietly. "I'm here because I understand what it's like to be watched, to feel unsafe. Maybe I can see things from Elena's perspective that others might miss." Marcus's expression softened slightly. "Fair enough. What do you want to know?" For the next 2 hours, Maya watched as Marcus traced the digital footprints left by Elena's stalker. The @watchful_guardian Instagram account had been created using a prepaid phone and a fake email address, but Marcus was able to track IP addresses and device fingerprints that painted a disturbing picture. "He's been watching her for almost a year," Marcus said, pointing to a timeline displayed on his monitor. "Look at this pattern. He follows her daily routine through her social media posts, then shows up at the same locations." Maya studied the data, her heart sinking as she realized the extent of the stalker's obsession. He knew where she worked, where she shopped, where she went to exercise. He was learning everything about her life. "Gets worse," Marcus said grimly. "About 2 months ago, he started using multiple fake accounts to befriend her coworkers and neighbors. He was building a network of information sources." Detective Chen leaned over Marcus's shoulder. "Any luck identifying him?" "Working on it. But this guy is careful. He uses VPNs, changes his digital fingerprint regularly, and pays for everything with cash or prepaid cards." Marcus paused, studying his screen. "Wait, this is interesting." "What?" Maya asked. "The location data from his posts. Most of them originate from the same general area, Capitol Hill, near Elena's apartment. But there's one location that shows up repeatedly, somewhere he seems to spend a lot of time." Maya's pulse quickened. "Where?" Marcus pulled up a map application and entered coordinates. A red pin appeared on the screen, marking a location just 6 blocks from Elena's destroyed apartment building. 1847 Madison Street, Marcus read. "It's a medical building." Maya felt all the blood drain from her face. "What kind of medical building?" Marcus clicked through several databases. "Looks like it houses multiple practices. Pediatric dentistry, physical therapy, psychiatric services. He paused, his face going pale. "And a pain management clinic where Elena Rodriguez worked part-time." The room fell silent except for the humming of computer equipment. Maya's mind raced through the implications. "He wasn't just stalking her randomly," she said slowly. "He was a patient. Someone who had legitimate access to her workplace, her schedule, her personal information." Detective Chen was already reaching for her phone. "Marcus, I need you to pull employee records, patient databases, anyone who would have had contact with Elena at that clinic." "Already on it," Marcus said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Maya stared at the map pin on the screen, a terrible understanding washing over her. "Detective Chen," she said quietly. "If he's a patient at the pain clinic, that means he probably has mobility issues, chronic pain, maybe psychological problems. That could make him unpredictable, dangerous. Or it could give us an advantage." Detective Chen replied, "Chronic pain patients have extensive medical records, prescription histories, insurance information. He'll be much harder to hide." Marcus looked up from his computer. "I've got something." Cross-referencing the IP address locations with patient check-in times at the clinic, I found 3 individuals who match the stalking timeline. All male, all have been patients for at least a year. "Names?" Detective Chen asked. "Robert Chun, no. Relation, age 34. Chronic back pain from a construction accident. Thomas Mackenzie, age 41. Fibromyalgia and depression. And..." Marcus paused, his face grim. "Michael Torres, age 29. Chronic pain syndrome and a history of psychiatric hospitalization." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of psychiatric history?" Marcus pulled up another file. "Multiple admissions for depression and anxiety, but also..." He stopped, his face going white. "Jesus, stalking and harassment charges from 3 years ago. Against a different woman, a teacher named Amanda Walsh." "What happened to Amanda Walsh?" Detective Chun asked. Though Maya could tell from her tone that she already suspected the answer, Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. "She disappeared. The case went cold after 6 months." The room erupted into activity. Detective Chun barked orders into her phone while Marcus frantically pulled up everything he could find about Michael Torres. Maya sat frozen, staring at the screen and thinking about Elena, about Amanda Walsh, about how many other women might have fallen victim to this man's obsession. "Maya," Detective Chen said, ending her phone call, "I need you to look at Michael Torres's social media activity and tell me if you see any patterns that might help us predict his next move." Maya nodded, grateful to have something constructive to do with the horror churning in her stomach. As Marcus pulled up Torres's digital trail, Maya studied the data with the focused intensity of someone whose own survival had always depended on reading people's patterns and motivations. What she saw made her blood run cold. "Detective," Maya said urgently, "look at his posting schedule over the past week. Since Elena disappeared, his online activity has completely changed." Detective Chun and Marcus crowded around Maya's shoulder as she pointed to the timeline. Before Elena disappeared, he was posting obsessively dozens of times a day, always about his pain, his loneliness, his anger at the world. But since the night of the fire, almost nothing. Just one post every 24 hours, always at exactly the same time. What does that suggest? Detective Chun asked. Maya's hands trembled as she scrolled through the sparse recent posts. "It suggests he's following a routine. A very specific, disciplined routine. Like someone who's taking care of something. Or someone." The implication hung in the air like a poison cloud. "You think Elena is still alive?" Detective Chun said. Quietly, "I think she might be," Maya replied. "And I think Michael Torres is keeping her somewhere that requires him to maintain a very careful schedule." Detective Chun was already moving toward the door. "Marcus, I need everything you can find on Torres's known addresses, associates, financial records." "Maya, thank you. You may have just saved Elena's life." But as Maya watched the detective rush off to coordinate what would surely be a massive search operation, she couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out faster than any of them realized. Within hours, the Seattle Police Department had transformed into a command center focused entirely on finding Michael Torres and hopefully Elena Rodriguez. Maya found herself in the unusual position of being consulted by detectives and analysts, her insights into Torres's psychological patterns proving valuable in ways she'd never imagined. The conference room had been converted into a war room, with whiteboards covered in timelines, photographs, and maps of potential locations where Torres might be holding Elena. Maya sat at a table surrounded by law enforcement professionals, feeling simultaneously out of place and more useful than she'd ever felt in her life. Torres has 3 known addresses, Detective Chen announced, pointing to marks on a large map of Seattle. His apartment on Capitol Hill, a storage unit in Georgetown, and a cabin near Snoqualmie that belongs to his deceased grandmother, Officer Martinez, who had been coordinating with other agencies, looked up from his phone. Georgetown unit's been cleared, nothing but old furniture and medical equipment. SWAT is preparing to breach the Capitol Hill apartment now. Maya studied the map, focusing on the cabin location. Something about it nagged at her, a pattern she couldn't quite identify. Detective Chen, Maya said, can I see Torres's posting history again? Specifically the timing of his posts over the past 3 days? Marcus pulled up the data on his laptop. Maya studied the timestamps, comparing them to the map distances between Torres's known locations. Look at this, Maya said excitedly. Every day at 6 p.m., he posts from the same general area, somewhere between his apartment and the cabin. But the IP address suggests he's using public Wi-Fi, not a residential connection. Detective Chen frowned. What are you thinking? Maya traced a route on the map with her finger. If he's keeping Elena at the cabin, he'd need to make supply runs, food, medical supplies, whatever. But he's also maintaining his normal online persona to avoid suspicion. So every day, he drives partway back to the city, stops somewhere with Wi-Fi, makes his posts, then goes back to the cabin. Marcus was already pulling up a database of businesses along the route Maya had identified. There are dozens of possibilities, gas stations, coffee shops, fast food restaurants. Wait, Maya said, studying Torres's medical records on another screen. He has a prescription for opioid pain medication. Strong stuff, dispensed monthly. When was his last pickup? Marcus checked the pharmacy records. 4 days ago. The day before Elena disappeared. Maya felt the pieces clicking into place. He planned this. He made sure he had enough medication to manage his pain while keeping Elena captive. But those prescriptions have to be filled at specific pharmacies, and they monitor for early refills. Detective Chen was already on her phone. I need a list of every pharmacy within 20 miles of the Snoqualmie area that's authorized to dispense Torres's medications. While they waited for that information, Maya continued studying Torres's patterns, looking for any detail that might give them an advantage. What she found chilled her to the bone. His posts are getting shorter, Maya said quietly. And more ... final. Everyone in the room turned to look at her. What do you mean, final? Detective Chen asked. Maya pointed to the screen showing Torres's recent social media activity. 3 days ago, his posts were still mostly about his pain, his anger, typical stalker obsession. But yesterday and today ... She scrolled through the messages. Listen to this. Some decisions can't be undone, and today, true love means never having to say goodbye. The room fell silent except for the sound of radios, crackling with updates from teams in the field. He's building up to something, Maya continued. Something permanent. Detective Chen's phone rang. She answered it quickly, listened for a moment, then her face went grim. The Capitol Hill apartment is empty, but they found evidence Elena was there. Blood on the bedroom carpet. Signs of the struggle. Maya's heart sank. How much blood? Not enough to suggest a fatal injury, but enough to indicate she was hurt. Detective Chen turned to Marcus. Any word on those pharmacy locations? Got them, Marcus said, highlighting several locations on the map. 3 pharmacies within a reasonable distance of the cabin, but only one that's on the route Maya identified. Sullivan's Pharmacy in North Bend. Maya studied the map again, focusing on the area around North Bend and the cabin location. Something about the geography triggered a memory, not her own memory, but something she'd read in Elena's social media posts months ago. Elena posted about hiking in that area, Maya said suddenly. About 6 months ago, before the stalking got really bad. She mentioned a trail near Snoqualmie Falls. Marcus pulled up Elena's Instagram feed. Here it is, perfect day hiking the Twin Falls Trail. Sometimes you need to get lost in nature to find yourself. Maya felt a chill of recognition. Torres would have seen that post. He's been following her social media for almost a year. Detective Chen was already coordinating with search teams. If Torres is familiar with Elena's hiking spots, he might have chosen the cabin specifically because it's near places she felt safe and happy. Classic stalker behavior, trying to recreate positive experiences with the victim. Over the next hour, Maya watched as law enforcement mobilized with impressive efficiency. Search teams were dispatched to the cabin and surrounding areas while others staked out Sullivan's pharmacy in case Torres made his daily supply run. But as evening approached and reports came back negative from the cabin search, Maya felt a growing sense of desperation. Time was running out, and they were missing something crucial. Detective Chen, Maya said as the command center began to quiet down for the night. What if we're thinking about this wrong? What do you mean? Maya stood up and approached the map, studying the terrain around the cabin area. Torres is a chronic pain patient with mobility issues. The cabin might be too remote, too difficult for him to access regularly while caring for a captive. Go on, Detective Chen said. What if the cabin is a decoy? What if he's keeping Elena somewhere more accessible, but still isolated? Maya traced her finger along roads and residential areas near the pharmacy. Somewhere he could reach easily for his daily routine, but private enough that nobody would hear her if she screamed for help. Detective Chen stared at the map, then at Maya with growing excitement. You think he's keeping her in a residential area? A house, maybe a basement or outbuilding. I think he's keeping her somewhere that feels normal to him, somewhere he can maintain his routines and his fantasy that this is a real relationship. Maya paused, a terrible thought occurring to her. Detective, do we know anything about Torres's family? Parents, siblings, anyone who might have property in that area? Marcus was already typing rapidly, pulling up family records now. Here we go. Parents deceased, no siblings, but... He stopped, his face going pale. His grandmother didn't just own the cabin. She also owned a house in North Bend, less than a mile from Sullivan's pharmacy. Maya felt her heart racing. Is anyone living there now? According to county records, it's been vacant since she died 18 months ago. Utilities were disconnected, but ... Marcus pulled up more data. Someone had the electricity turned back on 2 weeks ago. Detective Chen was already grabbing her radio. All units, we have a new primary location. 1247 Cedar Street, North Bend. Repeat, 1247 Cedar Street. As the command center exploded back into activity, Maya felt a mixture of hope and terror. They'd found Elena, or at least, they'd found where Torres was likely keeping her. The question now was whether they'd found her in time. Maya wasn't supposed to be in the surveillance van parked 3 blocks from the house on Cedar Street, but Detective Chen had made an exception after Maya argued that her insights into Torres's psychology might be crucial during the operation. Now surrounded by SWAT officers and listening to radio chatter from the team's positioning around the property, Maya felt the weight of responsibility settling over her like a heavy blanket. Through the van's tinted windows, she could see the house, a modest 1950s ranch style with overgrown landscaping and newspapers piled on the front porch. It looked abandoned, exactly the kind of place someone could hide a victim without attracting attention. Thermal imaging shows 2 heat signatures in the basement, the SWAT commander reported over the radio. One appears to be stationary, possibly Restrained, the other is moving around the space. Maya's hands clenched into fists. Elena was alive. After 4 days of captivity, she was still alive. Detective Chen looked at Maya seriously. We're going to try to establish communication with Torres first. Sometimes negotiation can prevent violence. Is there anything from his psychological profile that might help us approach him? Maya thought about everything she'd learned about Michael Torres, his chronic pain, his history of failed relationships, his obsessive need for control. He sees himself as Elena's savior, not her captor, she said quietly. In his mind, he rescued her from David, from a life that was making her unhappy. He won't understand why she's not grateful, so appealing to his sense of heroism might work. Maybe. But detective. Maya paused, struggling to articulate the dread that had been building in her chest. His social media posts suggest he's reaching some kind of endpoint. He's not planning for this to continue indefinitely. Before Detective Chen could respond, the radio crackled with urgent news. Suspect vehicle approaching. Blue Honda Civic. License plate matches registration for Michael Torres. Through the van's window, Maya watched as a small blue car pulled into the driveway of the house. The man who got out was thin and pale, moving carefully as if in pain. He carried a plastic bag that probably contained food and supplies. He's maintaining his routine, Maya whispered. Even now, he's trying to keep things normal. Torres disappeared into the house, and Maya held her breath as the SWAT teams adjusted their positions. The plan was to wait until he was settled inside, then attempt contact before moving to breach. 15 minutes passed like hours. Then the radio crackled. We are screaming from inside the house. The female voice sounds distressed. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Something had gone wrong. Torres's routine had been disrupted. Maybe by Elena trying to escape or simply by the realization that his fantasy was crumbling. All teams were moving now, the SWAT commander announced. Maya watched through the window as black-clad figures emerged from their concealed positions and moved toward the house with practiced precision. The front and back doors were breached simultaneously, followed by shouts of, "Police! Search warrant!" The radio exploded with activity room clearances, suspect locations, medical requests. Maya strained to make sense of the chaos desperately, listening for news about Elena's condition. Suspect secured in kitchen, non-responsive but breathing. The victim is located in the basement, conscious and alert, requesting medical attention. Maya felt tears streaming down her face. Elena was alive. They'd found her in time, but the relief was short-lived as more details came through the radio. The victim has significant injuries, dehydration, multiple contusions, possible broken ribs. EMTs requesting immediate transport to Harborview. Detective Chen squeezed Maya's shoulder. She's alive, Maya, because of you. None of this would have happened without your investigation. As they watched paramedics wheel Elena out of the house on a stretcher, Maya caught a glimpse of the woman she'd been searching for. Even from a distance, even injured and traumatized, Elena Rodriguez had a strength in her posture that suggested she'd survived. Something terrible but hadn't been broken by it. Torres was brought out in handcuffs, his head hanging and his body. Language suggesting complete defeat. As he was loaded into a police car, Maya felt no satisfaction, only a hollow exhaustion and the recognition that some people's pain made them dangerous to everyone around them. What happens now? Maya asked as the scene began to wind down. Torres will be charged with kidnapping, stalking, assault, and probably a dozen other felonies, Detective Chen replied. Elena will recover, though it'll take time. And you ... She looked at Maya seriously. You've got some decisions to make about your future. Maya wasn't sure what that meant, but before she could ask, her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Maya, this is Elena. Detective Chen gave me your number. I don't know how to thank you for saving my life. When I'm released, From the hospital, I'd like to meet you. There's something I want to discuss. Maya stared at the message, her mind racing with possibilities. Elena wanted to meet her. The woman whose life she'd saved wanted to thank her personally. But there was something in the phrasing, something I want to discuss, that suggested this might be about more than gratitude. 3 days later, Maya sat in a visitor's chair at Harborview Medical Center, nervously clutching a small bouquet of flowers she'd bought with money from her daily earnings. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and industrial cleaning supplies, familiar scents from her own occasional emergency room visits over the years. Elena Rodriguez looked smaller than Maya had expected, pale and fragile against the white hospital sheets, but her eyes were bright and alert. Despite the bruises on her face and the IV line in her arm, she smiled warmly as Maya entered the room. "Maya," Elena said, her voice hoarse but genuine, "thank you for coming. And thank you for—" She gestured vaguely, encompassing everything. "That had happened. Detective Chen told me what you did. How you found the ring. How you put together the pieces that led them to me." Maya placed the flowers on the bedside table and sat down awkwardly. "I'm just glad you're okay. I'm alive because of you," Elena said simply. "Because you cared enough about a stranger to keep digging when everyone else would have given up." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both processing the magnitude of what had occurred. Finally, Elena spoke again. "Maya, can I ask you something? When you found the ring, why didn't you just sell it? You could have walked away with enough money to change your life, and no one would have known." Maya thought about the question, remembering that night in the alley when she'd first held the ring and felt its weight. "It didn't feel right," she said simply. "The ring meant something to someone. It deserved better than being pawned by a desperate kid." Elena studied Maya's face with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Detective Chen told me about your situation, that you've been living on the streets." Maya tensed, prepared for the familiar mix of pity and judgment that usually followed such revelations. But Elena's expression remained thoughtful, not condescending. "She also told me something else," Elena continued. "Your last name is Chen, and you're 17, which means you were born around 2008. Maya nodded, unsure where this was going. Elena reached for a small bag on her bedside table and pulled out a photograph, old and slightly faded, showing a young woman holding a baby. Maya's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the woman from her own treasured photograph. "This is my sister Maya Chen," Elena said quietly. "She disappeared 14 years ago, along with her 4-year-old daughter, a little girl named Maya." The world seemed to tilt around Maya as the implications hit her. She stared at the photograph, then at Elena's face, seeing for the first time the resemblance that had been hidden beneath the injuries and stress. "You single quotes re ... Maya's voice failed her. "I'm your aunt," Elena said gently. "Your mother was my younger sister. When she disappeared with you, I spent years looking, hired private investigators, never stopped hoping." Tears were streaming down Elena's face now. "And all this time, you were here in Seattle, alone." Maya felt like she was drowning in revelations. That seemed too impossible to be true. "But my name, my foster records ... When children enter the system without proper documentation, social services often assign them new identities to protect them," Elena explained. "Your real name is Maya Rodriguez-Chen. Your mother named you after our grandmother." Maya's hands shook as she reached for her backpack and pulled out the worn photograph she'd carried for years. "Is this her, my mother?" Elena took the photo with trembling fingers. "Yes, this is Maria, my beautiful baby sister. What happened to her? Why did she disappear?" Elena's expression grew troubled. Maria struggled with addiction, with mental health issues. She was in an abusive relationship with your father, and one day she just vanished. I always assumed she was running from him, trying to protect you both. Maya felt years of questions and half-remembered fragments beginning to coalesce into a coherent story. "She's dead, isn't she?" Elena nodded sadly. The private investigator found records indicating she died of an overdose in Portland about 10 years ago. But there was no mention of a child. "I never knew what had happened to you until Detective Chen started asking about family members and mentioned your name and age." Maya stared at the photograph of her mother, feeling a complex mixture of grief and relief. For years, she'd held on to the hope that Maria was alive somewhere, that someday they might be reunited. Learning the truth was painful, but it also provided closure to questions that had haunted her entire conscious life. "Maya," Elena said softly, "I know this is overwhelming. And I know you're almost 18, old enough to make your own decisions about your future. But if you're willing—" She paused, her voice breaking with emotion. "I'd like you to come home. I'd like us to be family." Maya looked at this woman, her aunt, her blood relative, the first real family she'd ever known, and felt something shift deep inside her chest. For 17 years she'd been alone, invisible, surviving on the margins of society. Now suddenly, she had someone who wanted her, someone who saw her as more than just another casualty of a broken system. "I don't know how to be part of a family," Maya said quietly. Elena smiled through her tears. "Neither do I, really. I've been alone for a long time, too. But maybe we can figure it out together." Maya thought about her life on the streets, about Danny and the other people who'd become her chosen family over the years. She thought about the ring that had started this incredible journey, about the moment she decided to try to find its owner instead of selling it for survival money. That choice had led her here, to this hospital room, to the discovery that she wasn't as alone in the world as she'd always believed. "I'd like that," Maya said simply. "I'd like to try." Elena reached out and took Maya's hand, and for the first time in her memory, Maya felt like she truly belonged somewhere. 2 weeks later, Maya stood in the doorway of Elena's apartment, a modest 2-bedroom space in a safe neighborhood near the hospital. The apartment still smelled faintly of fresh paint Elena had insisted on redecorating after her ordeal, wanting to create a space that felt entirely new and positive. Maya's few possessions looked lost in the center of what was now her bedroom, a real bedroom with a window that faced east, letting in morning sunlight that painted golden rectangles on the hardwood floor. A bed with clean sheets, a desk where she could do homework, shelves waiting to be filled with books and memories yet to be made. "It's going to take some getting used to," Elena said from behind her, her voice still carrying traces of the hoarseness that lingered from her ordeal. Maya nodded, overwhelmed by the simple luxury of privacy, of safety, of belonging somewhere. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and be back in the alley." Elena moved to stand beside her, both of them looking into the room that represented such a fundamental shift in Maya's existence. That's normal. Trauma, good trauma and bad trauma, takes time to process. Maya turned to study her aunt's profile. Elena had been discharged from the hospital 3 days ago, but she still moved carefully, still startled at unexpected sounds. They were both healing, both learning to navigate a new reality. "Elena," Maya said carefully, "what happened to the ring?" "The engagement ring?" Elena's expression grew thoughtful. "Detective Chen returned it to me after Torres's arraignment. It was evidence for a while." She paused, then smiled slightly. "I gave it back to David." Maya raised an eyebrow. "You got back together?" "God, no," Elena laughed, the first genuine laugh Maya had heard from her. "But David and I really talked for the first time in months. We realized we'd been trying to force something that wasn't meant to be. The ring belonged to a version of us that never really existed." "What did David do with it?" "He's having it reset," Elena said. "Turning it into a pendant for his sister. Something beautiful, but without the weight of promises that couldn't be kept." Maya found something poetic in that, the ring that had started her journey being transformed into something new, something that honored the past while embracing a different future. Over the next few days, Maya began the complex process of transitioning from street life to what she was slowly learning to think of as normal life. Elena helped her navigate the bureaucracy of reestablishing her legal identity, enrolling in high school, and accessing the support services she'd never known existed. Detective Chen visited regularly, both to check on their recovery and to prepare for Torres's upcoming trial. Maya would be testifying as a witness, a prospect that terrified and empowered her in equal measure. "You know," Detective Chen said during one of these visits, "the Seattle PD has been talking about creating a civilian consultant position. Someone who understands life on the streets, who can help us connect with witnesses and victims who might not trust traditional law enforcement." Maya looked up from the homework she'd been struggling with. Algebra seemed impossibly abstract after years of survival-focused learning. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an opportunity to use your skills and experience to help other people," Detective Chen corrected. "It would be part-time, flexible around school, and it would come with training and support." Maya glanced at Elena, who nodded encouragingly. "I think you'd be amazing at that," Elena said. "You have insights that could save lives." The idea appealed to Maya more than she'd expected. She'd spent so many years feeling powerless, invisible, irrelevant to the larger world. The possibility of using her experiences to help others, to be part of solutions rather than just another problem, felt like a form of redemption. But there was one conversation she needed to have first. That afternoon, Maya made her way back to her old territory downtown, looking for Danny. She found him in their usual evening spot, reading a paperback novel with a flashlight as the sun set behind the city's skyline. "Well, well," Danny said, looking up as Maya approached. "Look what the cat dragged back. You clean up nice, kid." Maya was wearing new clothes, jeans that fit properly, a sweater that wasn't worn thin, shoes without holes. But more than that, she carried herself differently now, with a confidence that came from knowing she had a place to sleep that night. "I wanted to thank you," Maya said, sitting down beside him on the familiar concrete, "for everything you taught me, for keeping me alive when I didn't know how to do it myself." Danny waved dismissively, but Maya could see he was pleased. "Just passed along what somebody taught me years ago. That's how it works out here. We take care of each other." "Danny, I want to help. I'm going to be working with the police, helping them understand homeless communities, and building bridges. I need people I can trust, people who know the streets, but also care about making things better." Danny studied her face in the growing darkness. "You're talking about being a snitch?" "I'm talking about being a voice," Maya corrected. "Making sure that when bad things happen to people like us, someone with authority actually listens." Danny was quiet for a long time, considering. Finally, he nodded slowly. "I've been out here a long time, Maya, seen a lot of kids come and go. Most of them don't make it out. The ones who do usually forget where they came from." He looked at her seriously. "You remember where you came from, and you use that to help others, then yeah, I'll help however I can." Maya felt tears pricking her eyes. "I won't forget, I promise." As she walked back to Elena's apartment home, she was learning to call it, Maya reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. 2 weeks ago, she'd been a homeless teenager digging through a dumpster in the rain. Tonight, she was walking home to family, to safety, to a future that held possibilities she'd never dared imagine. All because she'd found a ring and decided to do the right thing instead of the easy thing. 3 months later, Maya stood in the courthouse hallway, wearing a navy blue dress that Elena had helped her pick out for Torres's sentencing hearing. Her testimony during the trial had been crucial in securing his conviction on all charges: kidnapping, stalking, assault, and a dozen other felonies that would keep him in prison for the next 25 years. The experience had been difficult but cathartic. Facing Torres in court, Maya had seen him not as the terrifying predator of her imagination, but as a broken man whose pain had twisted into something that hurt everyone around him. She felt sorry for him, but she also felt satisfied that he would never be able to hurt another woman the way he'd hurt Elena and Amanda Walsh. Elena emerged from the courtroom, where she just delivered her victim impact statement. Her recovery had been remarkable. Physically, she was almost back to normal, and emotionally, she seemed stronger than ever. The ordeal had changed her, but in ways that emphasized her resilience rather than her vulnerability. "How do you feel?" Maya asked as they walked toward the courthouse exit. "Relieved," Elena said simply. "Like I can finally move forward completely." Outside, Detective Chen was waiting with a smile and a manila folder. "Congratulations, both of you. Justice was served today." Maya had been working with Detective Chen's unit for 2 months now, serving as a bridge between law enforcement and Seattle's homeless community. The work was challenging but rewarding. She'd already helped resolve 3 missing person cases and had assisted in connecting dozens of people with social services and housing resources. "Speaking of moving forward," Detective Chen said, handing Maya the folder, "I have something for you." Maya opened the folder to find official documents, a high school diploma with her name printed in elegant script, dated for completion through an accelerated program she'd been working through with Elena's support. "I graduated?" Maya stared at the diploma, hardly believing it was real. "With honors," Detective Chen confirmed. "Your teachers said you were one of the most motivated students they'd ever worked with." Elena beamed with pride. "Now you can start thinking about college, if that's what you want." Maya thought about the future stretching ahead of her: college, career possibilities, a life that could be anything she chose to make it. The contrast with her situation 6 months ago was so stark it sometimes felt like she was living someone else's life. But there was one more thing she needed to do, one more piece of her past that needed resolution. That evening, Maya and Elena drove to a small cemetery in South Seattle where Maya Rodriguez-Chen was buried. Elena had located the grave through the private investigator she'd hired years ago, and they'd arranged for a proper headstone to replace the simple marker that had been there before. The new stone read, "Maya Rodriguez-Chen, beloved sister and mother. 1985 to 2015. She gave her daughter wings to fly." Maya knelt beside the grave and placed a bouquet of sunflowers, her mother's favorite flower, according to Elena. For so many years, Maya had carried anger and confusion about her mother's absence. Now understanding the full story of Maria's struggles with addiction and abuse, Maya felt only compassion and a deep sadness for the life her mother had never been able to fully live. "I'm okay, Mom," Maya said quietly. "I found my way home." Elena stood beside her, one hand resting gently on Maya's shoulder. "She would be so proud of you, of the woman you're becoming, of the choices you've made." As they drove home, Maya reflected on the chain of events that had led her here. If she hadn't been caught in that rainstorm, if she hadn't seen the glint of the ring in the dumpster, if she'd chosen to sell it instead of trying to find its owner, her entire life would have remained on its previous trajectory. Sometimes the smallest decisions created the biggest changes. Back at the apartment, Maya found a package waiting for her, a small box with her name written in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a letter and a piece of jewelry. "Dear Maya," the letter read, "My name is David Park. Elena probably mentioned that I'm her former fiancé. I wanted to thank you for saving her life and for helping me understand that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting someone go. As I mentioned to Elena, I had our engagement ring reset. I'm enclosing a pendant made from the same diamond. It's not about romantic love anymore. It's about the love that connects us to the people who matter. The love that drives us to do the right thing, even when it's difficult. You showed that kind of love when you chose to find Elena instead of selling the ring. I hope you'll accept this as a reminder that your choices matter. That your compassion has the power to change lives. With gratitude and respect, David. Maya lifted the pendant from the box. The diamond had been set in a simple silver mounting, elegant and understated. It caught the light beautifully, throwing tiny rainbows across the walls of her bedroom. Elena appeared in the doorway. "What's that?" Maya showed her the pendant and the letter. Elena's eyes filled with tears as she read David's words. "He's right, you know," Elena said softly. "Your compassion changed everything. Not just for me, but for David too. He's been going to therapy, working on his issues with control and possessiveness. Your investigation helped him see himself clearly for the first time." Maya fastened the pendant around her neck, feeling the weight of the diamond against her chest. It was the same stone she'd found in a dumpster during a rainstorm, but now it meant something entirely different. Now it was a symbol of the connections that bound people together, of the love that drove people to protect each other, of the courage it took to do the right thing when the world seemed determined to reward selfishness. "Elena," Maya said, "I've been thinking about what I want to study in college." "Oh, what subject?" "Social work. I want to help kids who are aging out of foster care, kids who end up on the streets because they don't have anywhere else to go." Maya touched the pendant. "I want to make sure no one has to be invisible." Elena smiled, the expression lighting up her entire face. "That sounds perfect. You're going to change a lot of lives." Maya looked around her bedroom at the books on the shelves, the diploma on the wall, the photos of her and Elena that were already beginning to fill the space with memories. 6 months ago, she'd been a homeless teenager with no future and no family. Tonight, she was a high school graduate with a college acceptance letter, a job that mattered, and an aunt who loved her unconditionally. All because she'd found a diamond ring in the trash and decided to return it to its owner. Some people might call it coincidence or luck. Maya preferred to think of it as proof that the universe rewarded acts of kindness, that doing the right thing, even when it was difficult, even when it cost you something, created ripples that could transform everything. What did you think of this thrilling journey? Share your favorite moment in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest tailies. What kind of story would you like to hear next?